May 6, 1984, 45,000 fans watched Kerry von Erich win the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. He was on top of the world, but that moment of glory was the peak of a mountain he was already falling from. Less than a decade later, he was gone. This is the story of how a motorcycle crash, a hidden amputation, and a crushing addiction turned the Texas tornado into a tragic footnote. Kerry Gene Adkisson, known professionally as Kerry von Erich, was born on February 3, 1960, the third wrestling son of Jack Adkisson, better known as Fritz von Erich. The family's identity in professional wrestling centered on world-class championship wrestling, WCCW, based in Dallas, Texas. Fritz promoted the territory and featured his sons prominently. The brand emphasized athletic, clean-cut babyfaces against colorful antagonists, designed for regional television that expanded through syndication. As a youth, Kerry excelled in track and field, notably the discus. His athletic background contributed to his presentation as a credible, explosive performer once he entered the family business. He debuted in the late 1970s and quickly became one of the central figures in WCW alongside his brothers, Kevin, David, Mike, and later Chris. The family's television exposure created a close identification between the audience and the brothers, who were marketed as local heroes. By the early 1980s, WCCW's production values and music-driven presentation helped it stand out. Camera work, entrance themes, and tight editing gave the Dallas product a national sheen despite being a regional promotion. The Sportatorium, the promotion's primary venue, became known for loud, engaged crowds. Syndicated TV expanded WCCW's reach beyond Texas, and fan clubs, merchandise, and radio promotion reinforced the Von Erich brand. The Freebirds feud was a central storyline that increased business. Michael Hayes, Terry Gordy, and Buddy Roberts became signature antagonists to the Von Erichs. Their turn on the family at a key angle, famously connected to a Christmas event at Reunion Arena, produced a long-running program involving cage matches, brawls, and sustained television heat. This rivalry demonstrated WCCW's capacity to fuse character work with live event momentum and created consistent sellouts. Within this environment, Kerry's appeal was rooted in physical charisma and a simple, effective moveset. He used the discus punch as a finisher and occasionally the iron claw, echoing the family trademark. He was not typically promoted as the most technical in-ring wrestler among the brothers. That role was commonly associated with David, but he was framed as the most telegenic and explosive, with strong body language and crowd connection. Photographs, posters, and television close-ups were central to his marketability. The National Wrestling Alliance, NWA, still operated a territory-based champion who traveled to defend across member promotions. Dallas promoters and fans believed both David and Kerry were credible future champions. David's reputation for ring generalship made him a frequent subject of speculation. Kerry's star power made him a natural candidate for a short-term title run designed to honor the territory's drawing power. The idea of bringing the belt to Texas, even briefly, aligned with Fritz's promotional goals and the NWA's need to satisfy multiple regions. Daily operations at WCCW were intense. Training, travel, and media obligations were routine. Fritz's expectations created a high-performance culture. Punctuality, kayfabe protection in public, and working through injuries when possible. This ethos helped WCCW maintain reliability and storyline continuity on television. However, the same approach reduced tolerance for vulnerability, and it set a bar the brothers tried to meet even under strain. Television further refined the family's presentation. Promos portrayed unity and local pride. Weekly episodic cliffhangers kept audiences engaged, and production techniques highlighted Kerry's strengths, framing him in strong light close-ups, structuring segments so he could burst at key moments, and limiting situations where long technical sequences would be necessary. The combination of television discipline and live event booking established Kerry as a first-choice headliner for reunion arenas and stadium events. The Von Erichs' growth coincided with changing industry dynamics. The national expansion from WWE, later WWE, and competition from other regional powers began to challenge WCCW's long-term stability. For several years, Dallas maintained a strong regional identity and audience loyalty. During this period, internal expectations solidified. Kerry would be a central figure in the promotion's efforts to stay competitive, and the family would carry the territory's brand. The stakes rose following sustained success in the Freebirds program and repeated sellouts. The Parade of Champions concept emerged as a large-scale event strategy, consolidating local loyalty and positioning Texas as a venue deserving marquee moments. Kerry's role expanded accordingly. He was consistently presented as the face of the territory who could headline stadium shows and represent Dallas on national wrestling media platforms. The first signs of strain existed beneath the surface pressures of drawing, performing, and maintaining visibility across multiple platforms. Kerry's insistence on peak presentation set high personal standards. He took on responsibility for pacing matches, meeting crowd expectations, and blending a short, high-energy move set with live audiences that expected main event intensity. These professional demands, paired with the family's drive, created a durable but fragile equilibrium. By late 1983 and early 1984, the narrative around the NWA title intensified. Dallas media and wrestling publications discussed the possibility of a Von Erich holding the World Championship. Then David's sudden death in Japan in February 1984 changed the trajectory. The event led to the David Von Erich Memorial Parade of Champions, at which Kerry won the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Although the reign was brief, it placed Kerry in the historical record and cemented WCCW's status for that era. The term family curse entered wider public usage through media shorthand and fan discourse. It referred to repeated tragedies affecting the Von Erichs over decades, including accidents and later unalived himself. While not a factual mechanism, it became part of the family's public biography. Within this context, Kerry's career in Act 1 can be characterized by rapid ascent, regional hero status, and the consolidation of a Texas wrestling dynasty under significant internal and external pressure. By early 1984, industry discussion placed David and Kerry Von Erich in proximity to the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. David's in-ring leadership and stamina led many promoters to view him as a potential long-term champion. Kerry's television presence and drawing power made him a candidate for a short, high-impact title run that would reward Dallas's business. The NWA champion, Ric Flair, rotated among territories to balance political commitments and gate needs. Dallas was positioned for a major moment if timing and interterritorial agreements aligned. David traveled to Japan in February 1984 for a scheduled tour. On February 10, 1984, he died in Tokyo. The official report cited acute enteritis as the cause. Immediately, contradictory narratives emerged within the wrestling community. Some peers referenced prior drug use and speculated about alternate causes. Others defended the official account, emphasizing stomach issues and the sudden nature of the illness. No widely released autopsy resolved the dispute to the satisfaction of all parties. The result was a persistent controversy, an official cause of death versus industry speculation unsupported by public medical documentation. In Texas, public reaction was substantial. The Von Erich family had a strong local identity through WCCW's weekly television. The funeral drew significant attendance, and regional media covered it extensively. Within fan culture and press shorthand, the family curse label increased in use. The term aggregated prior tragedies within the family into a single explanatory phrase. While the phrase is not a factual mechanism, it became part of how the public contextualized the Von Erich biography, and it followed subsequent events. From a business standpoint, the NWA and WCCW had to address both audience grief and ongoing scheduling. A solution emerged in the form of a memorial supercard. The David Von Erich Memorial Parade of Champions was set for May 6, 1984 at Texas Stadium. The main event booked Kerry versus Ric Flair for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. This aligned business and sentiment. It honored David publicly and offered Dallas a potential world title change without committing the NWA to a prolonged regional reign. The match occurred as scheduled. Kerry won the championship via roll-up after a referee bump sequence. The crowd response was significant, reflecting local investment and the emotional context. The title change entered the historical record as Kerry's only NWA World title. The reign was brief. Within weeks, Kerry lost the belt back to Flair on the touring loop. This outcome reflected the NWA's rotational model and the need to maintain champion availability across multiple territories. In Texas, some observers described the reign as a tribute. In NWA politics, it functioned as a compromise that acknowledged Dallas's drawing power while restoring the champion's broader obligations. The impact on Kerry's career was immediate. The title win established him as a recognized world-level headliner. It also underscored a structural limit. A regional star could be honored, but the traveling champion role remained centralized around Flair due to reliability, match-length expectations, and the NWA's existing bookings. From a promotional perspective, WCCW leveraged the title win to sustain momentum on television and live events. Posters, syndicated highlights, and interviews reinforced Kerry's status even after the belt returned to Flair. Internally, the family's roles shifted. With David gone, Kerry and Kevin carried more of the main event workload. Mike continued to be featured despite health challenges that would later become severe. Fritz maintained a high standard for professionalism and public presentation. The work rate remained heavy. Regular sportatorium tapings, spot shows, and regional drives. This maintained WCCW's visibility but increased the physical and psychological demands on the roster, including Kerry. Contemporaneous newsletters and later interviews reported differing interpretations of the NWA's decision-making. Some argued that David had been the favored future champion and that his death altered long-term plans. Others contended that while David was respected, the NWA's priority was continuity with Flair and controlled, short-term acknowledgements of hot territories. These views remain contested because NWA decisions often relied on informal agreements and promoter consensus rather than published criteria. The family curse narrative accelerated after the stadium event. It was used by fans and media to frame the Von Erich's trajectory: early promise, exceptional visibility, and repeated crises. In Kerry's case, the term's usage shaped expectations and retrospectives. It linked his title win directly to David's passing, creating a biographical arc that paired achievement with loss. The phrase also obscured granular factors, booking politics, travel schedules, and medical realities, by compressing them into a single motif. Still, it persisted, appearing in articles, documentaries, and fan discussions as an organizing device. Following the brief championship period, Kerry resumed his central role in WCCW. He continued marquee programs, including ongoing hostilities tied to prior feuds and new challenges meant to sustain attendance. His moveset and presentation prioritized short, high-energy sequences that maximized his physical advantages and minimized demands for extended technical chains. On camera, he carried himself as the promotion's top babyface. Off-camera, the travel and appearances continued at the established volume. In the wider industry, national expansion from WWE intensified. Cable and pay-per-view ecosystem changes shifted attention toward companies with national distribution. WCCW retained a loyal base but faced audience fragmentation. For Kerry, this context meant increased pressure to headline consistently to uphold gates while competing for mindshare against nationally televised brands. His title win remained a standout credential, but the daily requirements of sustaining a regional promotion did not lessen. The period from February to summer 1984 thus combined public mourning, a strategic championship acknowledgement, and a reassertion of business norms. Kerry emerged as the face of the territory, carrying the benefit of a historic win and the burden of heightened expectations. The record shows a brief reign, a sustained headlining position in Dallas, and the early consolidation of the family curse as a recurring frame in his public biography. In 1986, Kerry Von Erich was involved in a serious motorcycle accident in Texas. Contemporary accounts vary on the exact circumstances, but the injury to his right foot and ankle was severe. Medical treatment initially focused on reconstruction and infection control. Reports from family and colleagues describe multiple procedures and significant nerve pain. Within that year, complications led to an amputation involving the right foot. Sources differ on whether it was partial or near complete. What is consistent is that he required a prosthetic thereafter and faced permanent changes to balance and mobility. Pain management followed standard mid-1980s practices in professional wrestling and orthopedic recovery, including prescription painkillers. Some peers later asserted that Kerry had used pills before the accident due to the demands of travel and performance. Others stated the dependency took hold after the crash. There is no single medical record available publicly that resolves the timeline definitively. The documented facts are a catastrophic foot injury, amputation, ongoing pain, and prescriptions over an extended period. Professionally, he chose to continue wrestling. The decision was supported by family members and promoters who considered him essential to WCCW's box office. A strategic approach developed to protect his presentation. He wore a specially fitted boot and later long tights to minimize visible differences. Match formats emphasized short, high-impact segments rather than long technical sequences. The discus punch remained a featured finisher. The iron claw was used selectively. Layouts steered away from moves that required planting and torque through the right side. Knowledge of the amputation was treated as confidential. Family members have confirmed the secrecy, and several wrestlers have discussed it in later interviews. Accounts differ on how widely the information was shared in locker rooms during the late 1980s. Some opponents were informed for safety, others say they were not told at the time. Over the years, a commonly repeated anecdote has circulated about a prosthetic visible in a locker room shower area. This story appears in multiple shoot interviews. It functions as testimony rather than documented evidence, and not all contemporaries corroborate it. The core, verified point remains that Kerry worked with a prosthetic and that efforts were made to conceal it from the public. In-ring adaptations became routine. He shortened sprints, favored positions that allowed him to post on the left leg, and avoided extended sequences involving complicated footwork. Opponents were often directed to work toward the left side and keep grounded holds brief. Referees and agents, where present, supported time management to stay within his comfort window. Television production framed shots to favor upper body charisma and limited wide angles during movement-sensitive portions of matches. Physically, the prosthetic created ongoing challenges. Friction, blistering, swelling, and phantom pain are consistent with medical literature on lower limb amputations and are echoed in peer recollections. Managing these issues during weekly loops required taping adjustments, footwear modifications, and icing after events. Pain medication, whether prescribed or supplemented in the locker room culture of the time, became part of his routine. This is consistent with broader industry practices of the era and supported by later legal records that documented controlled substance issues. From a business standpoint, the crash compressed WCCW's options. The promotion still relied on Kerry as the top babyface, and the Texas market remained attached to his image. Booking adjusted by prioritizing angles and entrances that maximized reaction while limiting exposure to lengthy matches. House show cards were built with supporting attractions to distribute ring time. As national competition intensified, WCCW's dependence on Kerry's star power increased, even as his ability to deliver extended bouts decreased. Publicly, the accident's long-term severity was not disclosed. Fans were aware he had been injured and had returned. The extent of the amputation remained a private matter until years later. This secrecy aligned with kayfabe-era norms and business incentives. A visibly compromised top attraction could affect attendance and negotiating leverage. It also reflected personal privacy choices within the family. The accident's timing also intersected with family stressors. Mike's medical crisis and subsequent decline, and later Chris's struggles, compounded the pressure around the household and the promotion. While causation cannot be assigned, the context is important. Kerry's recovery and return occurred against a backdrop of repeated family health emergencies and mounting promotional headwinds. Performance data from the late 1980s indicates Kerry continued headlining major WCCW events and special shows, with match structures adapted to his condition. He also made appearances outside Texas when booked as a special attraction. His physique and presentation remained strong on camera, which sustained merchandising and television value. Behind the scenes, colleagues noted variable day-to-day capacity, consistent with pain fluctuation and prosthetic fit issues. By the end of the decade, the cumulative effect of the crash was clear. He could still function as a drawing star, but within a narrower range. The secret of the amputation required constant logistical and psychological management. The necessity of pain control hardened into habit. The decision to continue wrestling maintained his livelihood and WCCW's brand, but it set constraints that shaped every subsequent career move, including the transition that would soon take him to a national platform under a new ring name. Following his 1986 amputation, Kerry continued full-time wrestling with a prosthetic. The family and close associates treated the amputation as confidential information. The operational plan emphasized concealment. A custom right boot, layered socks and tape, and long tights. Opponents were briefed selectively. Accounts differ on how many were told and when. Some wrestlers stated they learned years later. Others recall receiving specific in-ring guidance. The secrecy aligned with the kayfabe norms of the era and with the practical goal of preserving Kerry's status as a top-drawing talent. Match construction reflected these constraints. Standard formats were adjusted to favor short, high-intensity sequences. Agents, when used, and veteran opponents structured bouts around strikes, brief crowd control holds, and clear comeback timing. Kerry posted primarily on his left leg for slams and planted for the discus punch only in controlled setups. Irish whips and corner spots were planned to minimize sudden torque on the right side. Referees were instructed to manage time and watch for signals indicating the need to accelerate finishes or cut non-essential sequences. Camera crews on television prioritized upper body shots during movement transitions. The locker room narrative from this period contains recurring anecdotes. A commonly reported story claims the prosthetic was once visible in a shower or changing area. Multiple shoot interviews repeat this account. Not all contemporaries corroborate it. The core verifiable point is that some colleagues eventually became aware of the prosthetic, either through direct observation or private disclosure. The broader rumor environment grew as visiting talent cycled through Dallas, carrying partial information to other territories. This contributed to the perception that Kerry was working under significant physical limitation while maintaining main event billing. The secrecy produced logistical demands beyond the ring. Kerry reportedly avoided public situations that increased exposure risk, such as swimming pools or communal showers when cameras or unfamiliar personnel were present. Travel days involved attention to footwear fit, blister management, and the possibility of swelling after flights or long drives. Athletic trainers and family members helped with taping and padding adjustments. These routines are consistent with standard prosthetic care and with the additional stress of professional wrestling schedules. WCCW booking adapted by emphasizing Kerry's value as a local and regional icon. Promotional materials featured posed photography and face-forward visuals. Television segments focused on interviews and angles that could be produced with controlled movement. In-match storytelling leaned on crowd interaction and familiar beats rather than long technical exchanges. This approach maximized audience response while limiting cumulative strain. Attendance patterns in the late 1980s show Kerry remained a reliable top-line draw, though overall territory business was affected by broader industry consolidation and cable-era competition. Colleagues described the physical consequences typical of lower limb amputations under athletic load: skin breakdown, socket fit issues, and phantom pain. These conditions often fluctuate day to day. Practical responses included mid-loop equipment refits, additional sock ply, and icing protocols post-match. Pain medication use, already present in the wrestling culture of the period, intersected with these needs. Later legal records indicate Kerry's struggles with controlled substances, which fit the wider pattern of pain management, drifting into dependency in the absence of robust medical oversight. Professional expectations remained high. Kerry's presence on cards stabilized gates, especially in Dallas-Fort Worth and surrounding markets. Promoters protected him by pairing him with experienced workers, and by avoiding stipulations that required extended brawls on uneven surfaces or complicated footwork. When stipulation matches did occur, layouts were simplified. Tag formats, with Kevin or trusted partners, were used to distribute ring time and allow strategic rests behind the apron and in heat segments. The rumor network produced two effects. First, it fostered respect among many workers who recognized the difficulty of performing with a prosthetic at that level. Second, it allowed rival territories and critical newsletters to speculate about longevity and reliability. As the decade progressed, national promotions increasingly valued consistency and travel endurance. Kerry's condition demanded careful planning. That reality became part of his professional evaluation, even when not publicly acknowledged. Family context remained a factor. The period overlapped with Mike's health decline and death in 1987, and later with Chris's struggles. These events added emotional strain and public scrutiny. The family curse label intensified in media coverage, which often paired Kerry's visible returns with references to private losses. While the curse narrative is not a factual explanation, it shaped how audiences and journalists processed the family's series of tragedies and Kerry's ongoing effort to maintain his career. By the late 1980s, the world-class brand had changed. Talent departures, competitive national programming, and shifting viewer habits affected attendance and syndication. Kerry continued to headline special events and television tapings, but the promotion's overall capacity to insulate him with deep undercards and extensive production resources diminished. He still delivered signature finishes and crowd-pleasing sequences, yet match lengths and frequency were calibrated to his physical limits. Evaluated strictly, this period demonstrates a sustained, managed return to high-level performance under significant medical constraint. The confidential handling of the prosthetic, selective opponent briefings, and modified match architecture were practical responses to a unique circumstance. The rumor environment is well documented in interviews and newsletters, but direct, verifiable facts remain. The amputation occurred. He used a prosthetic. Secrecy was deliberate. Booking and production were structured to preserve his effectiveness. These measures allowed Kerry to retain main event status locally and regionally, while the industry moved toward national consolidation that valued different forms of durability and predictability. Kerry joined the World Wrestling Federation in mid-1990. The company rebranded him as the Texas Tornado, a ring name that retained the Texas identity while creating distinct WWE intellectual property. Presentation emphasized his physique, tan, and straightforward babyface charisma. Production elements, entrance music, lighting, camera work were configured to accent his upper body presence and minimize wide shots during extended movement. His television introduction placed him near the upper card. The Intercontinental Championship was the immediate target, aligning him with a belt historically used for high-visibility babyfaces and athletic workhorses. The program with Mr. Perfect, Curt Hennig, began on television and culminated at SummerSlam 1990. On that event, the Texas Tornado defeated Mr. Perfect to win the Intercontinental title. The match emphasized strikes and a decisive finish featuring the discus punch, a move already familiar to audiences who followed his Dallas work. The victory established Tornado's credibility with WWE viewers and created merchandising opportunities around a new champion with clear branding. The title reign was brief. He dropped the Intercontinental Championship back to Mr. Perfect later in 1990 on the house show .Arsh taping loop. This outcome fit WWE's booking habits at the time: quick title changes to energize live cards and sustain episodic television, followed by resets to long-term plans. In practice, Tornado remained on television as a featured babyface, appearing in multi-man tags, short singles showcases, and interview segments that maximized his star aura while controlling in-ring duration. Match construction in WWE mirrored adaptations established in Dallas. Bouts typically ran in the short to mid-range, highlighting strikes, the iron claw as a visual hold, and the discus punch as a finish. Agents and opponents, often reliable ring generals, structured matches to avoid extended sequences requiring complex footwork or sudden torque through the right side. Television editors favored shot selections that kept the emphasis on facial expressions and upper body offense. These choices aligned with WWE's presentation priorities, and with Tornado's physical constraints stemming from the 1986 amputation, which remained undisclosed to the public. WWE's touring schedule increased demands. House shows, double shots, and TV tapings required frequent travel and quick turnarounds. Industry norms around pain management in this period remained permissive compared to modern policies. While WWE occasionally instituted drug testing windows, comprehensive wellness programs were not yet standard. Colleagues and later reporting indicate that Kerry continued to manage chronic pain. Documented legal issues from 1992 in Texas involving controlled substances and forged prescriptions post-date the initial WWE push but provide context for ongoing dependency risks during this era. Attendance and television reactions stayed favorable through late 1990 and into 1991. Tornado's visual presentation and defined moveset fit WWE's family-oriented programming strategy. He participated in Survivor Series and Royal Rumble lineups, reinforcing his status as a recognizable mid-upper card act. However, internal evaluation in WWE prioritized reliability and consistency across a dense schedule. Reports from newsletters and later interviews cite missed dates and injuries that complicated booking. The combination of physical limitation, pain fluctuation, and occasional availability issues contributed to a gradual cooling of his push during 1991 to 1992. Booking reflected this shift. Tornado moved from title contention to feature matches designed to elicit a strong crowd response without anchoring major storylines. He remained a frequent participant in television tapings where short, time-certain segments were valued. Against elite bumpers and tactically careful opponents, he continued to deliver the signature pop for the discus punch finish. When longer matches were required, layouts were simplified, or tag formats were used to distribute workload. Financially, WWE increased his earnings compared to regional work, but expenses and gaps between pushes affected net stability. Gear, travel, family obligations, and the cost of maintaining the on-screen look added pressure when bookings softened. The discrepancy between peak exposure, title win, merchandise features, and later card positions created a strain familiar to many wrestlers during the national expansion era. The company's broader roster dynamics also mattered. Early 1990s WWE featured numerous heavily promoted characters and physically imposing talents. Television minutes and pay-per-view slots were finite. Agents and creative favored acts that combined reliable in-ring duration, flawless attendance, and clear storyline hooks that could be advanced weekly. Tornado's best utility came in concise showcases, not extended angles requiring intricate match lengths or multiple dramatic beats. This reality limited upward mobility once the initial momentum leveled. Publicly, the amputation remained undisclosed during his WWE tenure. Privately, a limited set of colleagues understood his constraints and adjusted accordingly. The secrecy continued for the same reasons as in Dallas: competitive protection, personal privacy, and the belief that disclosure might harm booking leverage. As the road schedule accumulated, prosthetic fit issues and pain management remained persistent operational variables. By late 1991 and into 1992, Tornado's television role narrowed. He still drew audible crowd support on entrance and finish, demonstrating residual brand equity. However, the company shifted attention to new or resurgent acts while using Tornado to bolster cards without anchoring them. When legal problems in Texas surfaced publicly in 1992, WWE ended his tenure. The separation reflected performance reliability concerns, legal exposure, and the company's desire for predictable touring assets amid changing business pressures. In summary, the WWE phase delivered a national platform, an intercontinental championship win, consistent TV presence, and stable short-format matches tailored to his strengths. It also exposed the limits imposed by chronic injury, the demands of a dense travel calendar, and organizational preferences for reliability. The period fits within Kerry's broader biography as a peak in exposure, a demonstration of adaptable ring craft under constraint, and a precursor to the legal and health challenges that defined his final years. In 1992, Kerry von Erich faced criminal charges in Texas related to controlled substances and forged prescriptions. Public records document an arrest and subsequent legal proceedings that led to probation terms. Standard conditions included regular reporting, drug testing, and restrictions on travel and use of controlled medications without lawful prescription. For a working professional who relied on travel and whose medical history included chronic pain following a 1986 amputation, these conditions created immediate practical difficulties. During this period, his World Wrestling Federation tenure ended. Company decisions at the time reflected both performance considerations and reputational risk connected to ongoing legal matters. After his release, Kerry returned to independent bookings, primarily in Texas and surrounding regions. These appearances leveraged his name recognition as a former Intercontinental Champion and Texas headliner. But income proved inconsistent. Independent promoters built cards around his drawing power for short formats that suited his condition. Yet the absence of a national contract meant variable fees, fewer guaranteed dates, and greater exposure to gaps in scheduling. Probation compliance presented a recurring obstacle. Drug testing schedules, travel limitations, and required check-ins conflicted with a wrestler's erratic calendar. Reports from the era, court documents and news items indicate violations tied to substance use and compliance failures. Friends and colleagues have stated in interviews that Kerry expressed intentions to stay clean and meet terms, with periods of apparent success. However, relapse is a documented feature of opioid dependence, and chronic pain remained a baseline issue due to prosthetic use, socket fit problems, and cumulative wrestling wear. Family dynamics were strained by overlapping crises. The Von Erich household had already experienced multiple losses. Mike's death in 1987 and Chris's in 1991 were documented as unalived himself. These events influenced the family environment in which Kerry was attempting recovery. Public discourse increasingly adopted the family curse label to explain the pattern. Factually, the term is a narrative device rather than a causal mechanism. It aggregates separate incidents: accident, illness, unalived himself, substance-related legal trouble, into one phrase. Nonetheless, its widespread use affected media framing and public expectations around Kerry's trajectory. Inside the family, support and conflict coexisted. Accounts from interviews and memoirs describe efforts to help, including offers to stay at relatives' homes, rides to meetings, and supervision attempts. Other recollections emphasize the long-standing family ethos of toughness and perseverance, which sometimes translated to pressure to maintain work commitments. These perspectives are not mutually exclusive and are typical of families managing addiction under public scrutiny. There is no single authoritative record detailing private interventions. Available information comes from later recollections by family members and peers. Financial stress compounded legal and health pressures. Without a steady national contract, Kerry's earnings depended on consistent appearances and the ability to work multiple dates. Travel costs, child support obligations, and routine living expenses reduced margins. Missed bookings, whether due to injury flare-ups, legal obligations, or relapse, had immediate income consequences. Merchandise sales at independent shows and autograph sessions supplemented revenue but were sensitive to attendance and promoter reliability. Professionally, he maintained a scaled version of his established act. Independent promoters advertised the Texas Tornado name where possible or highlighted the Von Erich brand in Texas markets. Matches emphasized short, high-energy sequences, the iron claw and the discus punch, preserving recognizable elements. Opponents were typically veterans or local talents briefed to work safe, left-side heavy layouts. When he was able to appear and complete the bout, audience response remained positive, reflecting long-standing regional loyalty. Legal monitoring intensified through late 1992 and early 1993. Probation structures typically escalate consequences after repeated violations, progressing from warnings to revocations. Records indicate Kerry faced the possibility of incarceration for probation breaches tied to drug-related issues. He reportedly sought paths to compliance, including discussing treatment and focusing on shorter travel radiuses to meet check-in timelines. These efforts did not consistently align with the demands of independent wrestling, which often involved long drives and irregular hours. Media coverage in Texas tracked developments in a straightforward manner: charges, hearings, court dates, and outcomes. Wrestling newsletters added industry context, noting the effect on bookings and potential comeback scenarios. Some reports cited optimism around periodic clean stretches, including improved training and outreach to promoters for structured runs. Others emphasized continued setbacks. As with many public figures managing substance dependence in that era, the record shows alternating phases of progress and relapse without sustained resolution. Family accounts describe continued engagement between Kerry and his brother Kevin, who remained a point of contact and support. Conversations about treatment, work plans, and legal strategy occurred alongside normal family interactions with Kerry's daughters. These accounts underscore the dual track of his final year: attempts at stabilization and routine family life, interspersed with legal deadlines and health challenges. None of the available sources suggest a simple cause-effect chain. Rather, they show accumulation of factors that narrowed options. By February 1993, Kerry faced the prospect of probation revocation and incarceration. This outcome would have paused his ability to work, affected custody routines, and further strained finances. He communicated with family members about intentions to comply and return borrowed property, according to later family statements. The convergence of legal pressure, chronic pain, and professional instability defined his position at that moment. This phase of Kerry's biography is therefore characterized by documented legal trouble, repeated attempts at compliance, relapses consistent with opioid dependence under chronic pain, and a family system managing prior bereavement while providing intermittent support. The family curse label remained a public frame, but the operative realities were probation terms, medical challenges, financial volatility, and the logistical limits of working as an independent wrestler, while subject to court supervision. By February 1993, court records show Kerry Von Erich faced probation revocation in Texas related to prior drug charges. Standard consequences for violations included incarceration. Family and colleagues later stated he understood the stakes: a likely custodial sentence, interruption of work, and disruption of time with his daughters. He remained on the independent circuit, but the calendar was constrained by check-ins and testing requirements. The combination of legal pressure, chronic pain, and inconsistent bookings defined his position entering mid-February. Available accounts agree on the basic timeline. On February 18, 1993, Kerry traveled to his parents' property in Denton County, Texas. Family members later recounted that he intended to return a borrowed handgun that day. Conversations occurred with relatives, including his brother Kevin. Statements describe ordinary exchanges mixed with references to legal obligations and the need to address pending probation matters. No verbatim transcript exists, and recollections vary on tone and length, but the theme of constrained options is consistent across interviews. The facts documented by law enforcement are clear. On February 18, 1993, Kerry Von Erich died by unalived himself on the family ranch. The Denton County Sheriff's Office handled the response. Reports identify a gunshot wound and list the time and circumstances consistent with a self-inflicted injury. The investigation categorized the case accordingly. There were no criminal charges tied to the death. The official disposition remains unalived himself. These details are part of the public record and have been cited in subsequent biographies and media reports. Contextual factors identified by family and peers include escalating legal consequences, ongoing pain associated with prosthetic use, and career instability after leaving the World Wrestling Federation. None of these factors alone determine causation, but together they establish the environment in which the event occurred. The family curse narrative, in circulation for years by that point, reappeared in press coverage and fan discussions. Factually, it is a label rather than a mechanism. The verified elements are cumulative stressors: documented probation issues, medical realities, financial strain, and a history of bereavement within the household. Immediate reactions followed expected patterns. Family members notified authorities. Arrangements were made privately, and public statements were limited. Local and regional media reported the death with basic biographical information. Texas wrestling star, former NWA World Heavyweight Champion, former WWE Intercontinental Champion, member of the Von Erich family. Wrestling publications added industry context, referencing his 1984 championship win, the 1986 motorcycle accident and subsequent amputation, and his Texas drawing power throughout the 1980s. Colleagues and promoters issued comments that focused on his popularity, physical charisma, and the intensity of the WCCW era. Some contemporaries included references to the pressures of the wrestling lifestyle at the time: heavy travel, limited medical oversight, and a permissive culture around pain management. A few cited awareness, in retrospect, of the amputation and its concealed impact on his day-to-day functioning. These statements provide perspective, but do not alter the official record surrounding the cause and date of death. Funeral services drew attendance from wrestlers, family friends, and longtime Texas fans. Coverage emphasized the Von Erich family's central role in Dallas wrestling and the accumulation of tragedies over decades. The list of losses, Jack Jr., David, Mike, Chris, and now Kerry, was repeated across articles and broadcasts. The repetition reinforced the curse shorthand in public memory. From a factual standpoint, those entries are accurate as discrete events. The curse construct remains interpretive language used by media and fans. In the months following, biographical pieces and documentaries clarified additional details. They addressed his 1986 amputation, the deliberate secrecy around the prosthetic, the adapted match structures, and industry practices regarding painkillers during the period. Court records and news items outlined the 1992 arrest and subsequent probation. Family interviews added personal context. Attempts at support, moments of stability, and the difficulties of aligning recovery with a profession built on irregular schedules. There is no evidence of a single precipitating incident on February 18th, other than the already documented legal pressure and the logistics of probation compliance. The handgun's presence is accounted for by the family's statement that it had been borrowed and was to be returned. Law enforcement materials do not indicate foul play. The scene, as recorded, matched the conclusion of unalived himself, and authorities closed the case accordingly. Historically, Kerry's death closed a specific era in Texas wrestling. WCCW had already declined as a promotion, but the Von Erich name remained a cultural fixture in the region. His passing formalized the shift from living headline to memorialized figure. In the professional record, he is listed as an NWA World Heavyweight Champion and a WWE Intercontinental Champion, who competed through a significant medical disability that was concealed for competitive and personal reasons. In the public record, the final entry is the Denton County Report, dated February 18, 1993. Like and subscribe for 100 years of luck. Until next time.